Hey everybody, welcome to Investing in Cannabis. We've got a great episode on tap for you today. Really the gold standard in early stage cannabis investors, Poseidon Asset Management, Emily and Morgan. They were on the show about a year ago and we had a quick catch up with them about what they've invested in the last year. Follow-on rounds with Headset and Dope Magazine, as well as new stuff with HR platform Work and more about hemp. It's going to be a huge industry and it's a great episode. Thanks again to Gateway for having us over here and letting us use their office. Tune in, listen up, get acquainted. Are you looking to start a cannabis company? Do you need office space? It's really hard and it's really expensive. So Gateway has started Gateway Works, which is just a co-working space specifically for the cannabis industry. You can rent a desk, I think it's $300 for the month, and take advantage of this awesome community and glean the energy and the knowledge from all the other companies. You gotta check it out. Friends, so good to see you again. Emily, Morgan, great to have you back on the show. I think it's been a year or so, maybe a little more. Everyone has changed quite a bit, but let's get into it. So 1 week before the now historic election, I interviewed Troy Dayton, and he told me that everybody is waiting to put money into this industry, that everybody's waiting till after the election, and come December, there's this wave of cash coming in. Is that happening? Let's start with Emily. Go
ahead. It has been a mixed bag of events since the election. Obviously, we had an historic night for the cannabis industry with 8 of the 9 initiatives passing. And it was passing nationwide. So we now have coverage of adult use from the East Coast all the way through to the West Coast. And we added Florida to all of that, which is a massive market. So yes, there was some investor exuberance around that. And actually leading up to it, there was a lot of investor frothiness, as we say. And I'll let him speak to that a little
frothiness,
bit.
I like
frothiness,
that.
Yeah. But then there was this thing that occurred where Sessions was appointed as a potential attorney general. And as our policy leader, Rob Campia, says, he's about a 1.5 on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 would be a good choice. Unfortunately, the other runners-up were no better, so this appears to be kind of the situation that we're in. And so I think that kind of tampered a little bit of the exuberance. Rightly so. I think people are kind of in a let's observe and see what this new administration is going to do.
Speaking of the new administration, how much of this is any conservative administration would have been bad for cannabis, and how much is it Trump's administration is bad for cannabis? Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, the industry was clearly in the Hillary camp because it was more of just a known path, right? And now we're kind of venturing into this, a bit of an unknown. And that was the concern around Trump in general, was just he's an unknown, right? Because it's really hard to understand his position one way or another. One tweet to the next could be, completely different. So, and that's what's playing out. And I don't know if it was if a different administration, I guess we probably have a little more sense, but we're kind of living in this wild card world right now. And we were talking about the other day is there's just a war on facts, right? And it's trying to understand what's real, what's actually the case, or are we, is what's being said not actually going to happen? So
how much is fear, how much is reality? I mean, it certainly seems to be a potential wrench in the cannabis plan. I think everybody was really excited. 1 in 5 Americans now live in a place with some marijuana legislation, but that can all be kind of washed away in a way, right? I mean, everybody's going to be fearful, particularly investors. I mean, how much is that a part of the conversation with people that you look to raise money from?
Yeah, I think it's a big part of the conversation, but our job is to demystify and separate the hype, the fear from the actual information that's relevant to the investing landscape. And for us, it's just a big part of our strategy is to be tapped into these policy groups and to pay homage to those people that really help us to pave the way for these laws to change. But about the conservative thing, it has been an issue that's been represented on both sides of the aisle, which is a good thing, I think, for the industry. And for the states' rights and business interests alone, it makes a great deal of sense to keep this momentum going forward. And not to mention, if we turn it back, we're going to let Canada just run away with this prize.
Yeah,
so.
Canada's way
Yeah,
ahead of
no,
us.
that was a couple down, but let's talk about Canada. Super interesting. There is a big public play in Canada. I read a Mattermark article yesterday where you were quoted, actually, and it said that even though all the hype comes from the private market and from venture, the money to be made is in the Canadian public market. Is that true? You think that's true?
Well, this year has certainly been a very positive year. The one thing that's the big difference between Canada and the United States is they actually have access to the public markets in a much more functioning way. I mean, it still is very early stage up there. Most of these companies are either on the CSE, which has very light regulations and listing requirements, or the TSX Venture Exchange, with the Toronto Stock Exchange's venture, which again is not as tightly regulated as a listed exchange like the Toronto Stock Exchange. But you're seeing massive amounts of capital being raised relative to our industry. And so these businesses, mostly licensed producers so far, have been accessing that and raising significant capital.
Because there's a limited number of licenses too. Like there's only like 36 or so, I think I read, which of course increases each one of their values pretty drastically.
Exactly, yeah. So if you were to do a market equivalent, take Canada with 36 producers to California with something like 53,000 producers, you're talking about fewer but larger opportunity in Canada. And that's just kind of the way Canada likes to do things anyway, much more of a regulated marketplace, or fewer but larger they prefer. But it is starting to, the mix is getting deeper up there, which is good to see. Other types of businesses accessing public markets up there and still raising pretty healthy amounts of capital. So it has been a good place for open market investors or investors that have done private investing and have seen their shares become liquid and making. I mean, this year we've seen 2 to 5x returns up in Canada and some of our companies.
Canopy specifically, right? And Aurora has done pretty well in the public market, but which one were you referring to?
Well, Canopy definitely gets the headline because they were the first to cross $1 billion market cap. But we've been longtime shareholders of Aphria. That was from the outset. That was the one we chose, given its low-cost production capabilities.
Got it.
Really embracing that from day one, and having the existing background of being large-scale agricultural producers, just making that switch to cannabis. But Aurora claims to be one that's going to be absolutely massive in production. They have a ways to catch up, but it'll be interesting to see, because Aurora and Canopy are kind of just going for we're the biggest, we're the best approach, and there will definitely be some shakeout in Canada. But for now, the public markets have been very liquid, deep, with solid investor bases. Really very different to the United States, where most of it is in the OTC markets, thinly traded, lots of abuse, just low quality shareholders too, not really savvy, which you're seeing is not translated to Canada.
And how much do you think about getting involved? I mean, I know you own that particular stock, but do you think, hey, like we could transition and do more public market stuff, or you're still really focused on the venture side?
We have another holding up in Canada that hasn't yet gone public, and so we are.
Well, here's your chance.
Yeah, exactly. But we're still building that out very judiciously. I think that one thing I worry about is that people think it's a sure bet. Any one of those LP licensed producers would be a sure bet, but there are so many fundamental factors to consider. But I think one of the things we're looking at is how our ancillary companies in the United States that are business technology solutions, software solutions, B2C, data analytics, how all of that can apply to this market, and especially if they do, which they are slated to open up the adult use in the spring up in Canada. I think all of this will become incredibly relevant to them as they really shift over to not just a medical program, but to now we need to address a consumer market just like any other industry.
Yep.
So I think that's what we're looking at for opportunities for our companies, is how to expand across the border.
I was going to say just one. Emily makes a really good point about just the market in general. There is a lot of this. The prices today are pricing in already just the outright legalization. So, it wouldn't take much to take the wind out of their sails, to kind of squash some of the momentum up there if there's any step back in the rollout of the legalization. Because everyone is, scrambling to build as much capacity as they can because they think they're going to just have unbelievable amounts of demand. Well, what happens if that doesn't? And so, we definitely tread very cautiously in general, and that's just a one thing that we would make sure people are just can't go in blindly and assume that you're going to make a lot of money.
Yeah, how much of the premium is in the value of it just being cannabis and just being new versus how quality these companies are, how quality these investments are? Any idea how to sort of, measure that in any way?
Sure. Well, if you look up in the Canadian market, it's if you look at the types of companies you can invest in or the sectors, they've been really beat up. The mining sectors, gold, oil. That's a lot of what their public markets offer. And since this has been so depressed, all of their investors see a new opportunity, right? So there's definitely a crowding of that and valuations that are very hard to justify today. Sure. So, if, say, oil were to come back for whatever reason, I'm not saying that it is, but if it were, and then all of a sudden the oil stocks up there were to start booming again, if that supply-demand shifts and some of the investor focus gets pulled away, that'll certainly pull some of that supply that's been pushing up these stock prices.
Got it. So shifting gears a little bit back to your portfolio for a second. So we haven't talked in about a year, so tell me some of the stuff that you've been investing in. What's the segments that you're excited about right now?
One of the ones that we've actually been adding on to some of our existing investments that are performing well, demonstrating that they're hitting their key metrics and carrying on from there. So after seeing that, we've been leading a couple of rounds after that early convertible or KISS or what's it called, SAFE round. Now they're doing a price round, the Series Seed. So that's been great to see. But we have...
And these are like Tradive, Headset. What are you fallen on both of those?
Headset would be one
Headset?
that we've added on to.
Got it.
And that one was very recent and really exciting because they've been really showing some amazing
they're
things.
Crushing it.
Yeah.
They're
so,
crushing it,
and I just can't wait to see what the future holds for what they're going to reveal about consumer behavior in the cannabis industry.
And then what's the structure of that? Is it a separate fund for follow-on? Is that how it works, or all the same?
Right now, because it's still relatively early stage, it's the same fund. But the thing we're thinking about, and Morgan and I've been talking about what's next for this industry, and for those later stage investments, we'll probably have one VC fund kind of strategically carved out to focus on some of those winners that we feel like are ready for those big late stage checks. So
got it. So Headset followed on anything else from previously?
Baker, yeah, they just filed a Form D at the end of last month, and that was, Baker it's been really great to watch them. Emily has been talking with them. I mean, she's 2.5 years at least, and they got into 500 startups, and just a really solid core founding team. And just watching them go from 3 founders to almost 20 people now, and going into 150 plus. Just dispensaries, just really rolling out and scaling up.
Is that the main metric? Just how many dispensaries you can be installed in the beginning? Is that the best metric?
GMV, monthly recurring
MRR,
revenue. Yeah, there are a couple. And good question, because it does depend on the company.
Sure,
but we like that monthly recurring revenue. That's
everybody does.
But the dispensary numbers are important because market share is important.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the industry all knows that market share. I mean, in every industry, right? Market share matters. Yeah. But those that are doing it right and offering a good solution set that is a true benefit to their consumer or their customer, you're just seeing the market starting to adopt those. And Baker's hitting that pretty well. And their Thanksgiving Day, was it Cyber Monday or first it was Green Friday and then Cyber Monday. I mean, they had a lot of press around just how much transaction activity was happening around there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And their platform scaled beautifully and no problems.
Awesome.
And then just a couple other, we did an industrial hemp processing technology.
So this is new stuff,
That's
right?
a new one,
New stuff, yeah.
So, and that's pretty exciting because that's a part of the market not many people are really thinking too much about.
Yeah, nobody thinks about hemp. What's the value of hemp? I mean, is that going to be how many multiples bigger than THC and psychoactive stuff?
It just has so many end uses that it's really incredible. And I think the thing that most people don't give it enough credit for is it's not your like spring break hemp necklace with a seashell on it. It's it's actually like carbon nanotechnologies that can replace the graphite graphene battery in your phone.
Wow.
So there's things like that that are being studied in the university level. At PhDs are studying the uses of bast fibers such as hemp, and this stands to be a really a game-changing fiber in our world. And several companies have started to take note that cotton is really difficult to cultivate. It's not sustainable. Bamboo is a terrible greenwashing thing that is really actually not very sustainable from a fiber standpoint. But something like hemp really is, and I think that's the fiber of our future. We just haven't figured out how to really refine it the right way yet, and this technology stands to be that solution. So that's
Very
really
cool.
exciting.
So that's the one that you invested in, the one that's experimenting with cell phone batteries?
Well, they're basically, it's almost, we like to think of it as the toll road. It refines things to the point where it can go to that next process where it can be used in graphene. It can be used for plastics, for 3D printing. It can be used for fibers for clothing and other things like that. So there's 25,000 end uses of industrial hemp.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Yeah, we got to do a hemp episode, Eric. We got to
Yeah.
do it. We got to do some hemp stuff.
We have
Yeah,
some people you can talk
Yeah,
to.
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah.
I was gonna so a lot of so what they start processing, and then you have these different R&D kind of facilities that are buying from us to do their testing. But I was down in was it Redwood City, I guess, a couple weeks ago at a talk with Yvon Chouinard from Patagonia.
Uh-huh.
And he made, obviously he's very focused on the environment and trying to do as much sustainable practices as he can in his own business. And he did say that hemp is the best fiber for textiles. And we just need to get that figured out. And it's really cool, the early indications that we're seeing from this processing technology that we've invested in. Now we just need the farmers to get the right strains to start really growing good fiber quality.
And how much of a cotton lobby is there? There must be a pretty significant opposition there. I mean, that's a pretty long road, isn't it?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, so it is one of those things that requires more patience and foresight, I think, and that's why I don't think it gets as much interest as many of the other ones.
Plus, it doesn't get you high.
Well,
Right.
You know,
Our
it just
reporters
isn't
just
as
said
good
that
in a
to me.
headline,
Yeah,
right? It just isn't as
exactly.
good in a headline.
It's definitely not as good of a headline, but it's the sleeping giant.
Everybody's asleep already now that we've just
Yeah.
What else is new? What else have you guys invested in the last?
Payroll services, HR payroll services.
Yep.
So Work, which is a graduate of the Canopy, they again really solid founder team and a major unmet need. I mean, one of the pain points we continue to hear were we just got set up on ADP. 2 weeks later, we're dropped. And how disruptive is that to your business when you're just amongst all the other challenges we face in this industry? If you can't have at least consistency in some aspects. And they're hitting that, and not only hitting the solution of payroll services, but understanding tracking needs for, say, 280E or challenges around hourly employment needs. So a lot of the pain points and a lot of the friction of HR services in the cannabis industry. And so again, solid team, solid technology, scaling up really nicely.
Got it.
So-
Yeah. You brought up Canopy. We're in Gateway Incubator right now. They were
Yes.
nice enough to give us their space for the day. How valuable are incubators to you guys? I mean, is that good deal flow? How closely do you watch the classes? How involved are you?
Well, it's nice because we sit at the point where we are and we get to kind of see what comes through the classes. We're big fans of the work that Gateway is doing too, and it's great that they're here in Oakland cultivating this startup culture in the Bay Area around cannabis. So we think it's incredibly valuable because in general, having these incubators in the industry is raising the bar for how these companies are doing their entity formation, getting their docs together, preparing to take investment dollars. And someone like Keegan from Work, it was one of the first times that someone sent me an entire due diligence of email with all of the things that basically we have on our checklist.
You would have asked
they had
anyway,
prepared
yeah.
for.
Yeah.
So that was a moment where I was like, wow, things are really progressing in this
Yeah.
industry from an investment standpoint.
Well, that's exactly what the incubator is supposed to do,
Yeah.
is set you up nicely for that.
Exactly.
So there's this kind of perspective going around now. I've heard Kevin O'Leary of Shark Tank, Mr. Wonderful, say it, that he'll only invest in female founders, that they make the best founders and that their companies are more successful. How much do you think about that? females or minorities or anything like that?
Well, I think Kevin should call me because I'm a female founder. We do think about that all the time. And actually, when I look at our founders, we have a nice range of diversity within the portfolio. I'd like to see more female founders, and we are actually talking with a couple of groups. They're a little early they're not quite ready to take investment dollars, but that's partially why I'm talking to them, is so that down the line they will be ready. I want to make sure they're a prepared company to take investment. And I do think that female founders are incredibly diligent about their work, and they hate to fail. So they're not, sometimes men can be cavalier about failing in their businesses, and they're just on to the next project. But I think that women really hold it close to their heart. So.
Yeah, well, I think sometimes the best founders have like a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, like they're going to prove somebody wrong, and I think that's certainly happening with female founders. Like, yeah, I'm a woman, but I'm going to show you how I'm going to crush you anyway, right? Like that's definitely a real thing. Interesting that that's part of the evaluation, though, at least in small part. Anyway.
Yeah, we definitely think about that because it is different people from different backgrounds have different lens through which they see business, so it's really helpful.
Got it. Let's look forward a little bit. I think last time we talked, you were working with about a $10 million bank account that you were investing in. What's the next round look like? You know, where do those LPs come from? How much are you looking for? What's the next step for Poseidon?
Yeah, it's a great question, and you know what we're seeing is basically when you're asking before about capital flow, going into, let's call it September. The swimming pool was maybe 3 inches deep, right? So we still have a long way to fill it up to really think about what real capitalized industry looks like. Certainly say that the spigot's opened up quite a bit more, but still is largely individuals, family offices, partners.
Angels still.
Yeah, the angels, family offices, partners of venture capital funds, or partners of private equity funds, or even executives at investment banks. I mean, we're getting more and more capital from, but it's still individuals, and it's just a challenge of the regulations and or vice clauses. And so, but at the least, having more and more people, more and more eyeballs in these institutions, actually writing checks. Gives us a lot of confidence about the future for capital flow, and we're trying to definitely position ourselves to be, some of the first institutional capital that really comes to the industry. Given now that we'll have 3-year track record, invested in so many different aspects of the industry.
How many investments at this point?
We've done 35 to date. We have 26 in the portfolio,
and that's in a 2-year period or so, right? How long have you guys? Almost three.
Yeah.
Got it. Very, very cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, so when we're looking at 2017, I don't think the institutional capital will come yet.
Okay.
But at least we're talking about a much more significant pool. And even, obviously sessions took a pause for some people, but because the pool, went back to the swimming pool, it's filled up quite a bit more, that, they may take a little while. They're going to hang out in the kiddie pool and for a little bit, but they're coming.
Well, the sessions thing kind of cuts both ways. I mean, as a whole, yes, it makes it more risky. But in another way, because it makes it more risky, it makes the dollars going in even that much more valuable, right? I mean, people must acknowledge that to some extent too. Like, shit, I better get in now while other people are still scared.
Yeah.
Do you find that?
That's a great, I mean, one of the things, again, back to the fall was, we saw a lot of bad deal structures getting funded because there was just capital coming without regard. They just wanted to get in before elections. And so, for example, some private companies were raising in a common stock structure, and for us it's just a no-go, and so now kind of having that
just because they can.
They could.
Yeah.
There was enough money out there that wanted it, and
Yeah, and this is in general, I'd like to see more in the industry where investors help other investors to make sure that we work together to create the best deal structure for the company, so that the investors have a potential to see a return, but also so that the company can continue to raise money wisely down the line.
Got it.
And sometimes when there's that exuberance, people rush in, they inflate the valuations to a point where it shouldn't be, and then it ends up, we're already seeing some down rounds now because of that. And or we're seeing structures that are not amenable to future raising of capital. And so those are important factors to keep in mind. We're really looking for investors to help work together to make sure these structures are sound. So.
Yeah, the thing that I hear from founders all the time is, I got so many people that want to invest in me, but I can't find that lead investor yet. How do you guys think about leading? What's the decision process to lead around?
Well, we've just we just stepped up and started doing it because, like Emily was saying, is getting the investors aligned, and not that just trying to make sure that we're aligned to protect our interests, but also aligned for the company's sake as well.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely this middle ground to find, and not having advantageous terms one way or the other, kind of getting things out of balance. So I think we've done 7 rounds now that we've led for companies. Because we want to make sure the terms were right, we want to make sure the documents were correct, just to make sure that these companies are set up for the future and not just for that moment. So we're definitely comfortable with that, stepping up and leading and organizing it, making sure it's good. And part of it's, we've done enough times now. We've got a great legal team that's making sure that things are tight and correct, so that everything flows through smoothly. Otherwise, like you say, they're hunting for a lead. They're kind of aimless. And months just go by and opportunities lost. And the biggest thing is to get the capital in the door as efficiently as possible so they can get back to doing what they need to do.
Got it. How about the second fund? Is there a timeline on that, when that's coming, how much it'll be, anything you can share?
That's a great question. Is a good answer to everything.
Yes.
I think that we want to make sure that we this fund is our big focus. So until we feel like this fund is set to go, that it's properly capitalized, we won't be moving on to Fund 2. And even when we do launch Fund 2, it will really be just to complement Fund 1, so that they will be very synergistic in their relationship. So
Got it. Very
so I know
cool.
that's not a clear answer, but it's partially
It's completely unclear, but it's mostly the one I expected, so no worries. Shifting gears a little bit here, I love to ask people that do really important things during the day with cannabis about how they like to consume cannabis. I think we did this about a year ago too, but I'm curious, like, anything new that you're smoking on, edibles, vapes, what do you like? What are you into?
Well, I'm still an Evo user.
Me too.
I mean, it just works. It does a great job.
I'm so ready for V2 though.
Same here.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
We just saw some sneak peeks of it.
Yeah, Eric did too. Eric went to a little testing thing. It was pretty cool. Yeah.
I didn't get to do that.
Well, they're keeping the good stuff for you.
tomorrow.
They're
Okay.
they want to, really like,
So that's I guess I'm.
And flowers or
pretty-
concentrates? The nail or
Still flower.
Me too. I like the basket. I don't do
Yeah.
the Vapex nail too much. Only when Sabo's there and
Yeah.
he rips my face off. That's a different story. How about you, Emily?
I've been really into, there are a couple of strains, so it's been more flower focused, but it's this really great mix of a high CBD, but it still has a little bit of THC in it. So it's not one of those ones that's almost no THC.
Like 8 to 1 or something
Yeah,
like that.
exactly. So those have been things that I've been really enjoying because it does, from a health standpoint, feel very beneficial to me. So, and I'm really bummed because I can't remember the name of any of them, but one of them was from this place up in Oregon called Pharma, and it's like F-A-R-M-A.
Okay.
And I was really impressed by that, which was my first Oregon experience.
Got it. What did you like about it? What was so great about it?
I just thought it was really well balanced, and I felt really healthy for having consumed it, which was really nice, because I do consume it for health reasons too. So it was nice to have something I felt was very effective.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, always a pleasure to see you guys. Honestly, the gold standard in what I think is the early angel investing fund, whatever we want to call it. You are the place to go to get money. I commend you for not being one of these bullshit investors out there that talks and kicks a lot of ties. You're writing checks and leading rounds now, which is so necessary as well. Plug some stuff. Everybody knows where to find you, I think. Anything you want to plug here? Emails, websites, anything like that?
Yeah, PoseidonAssetManagement.com. We're at Poseidon Asset on Twitter, which is pretty regularly updated, and same with Facebook, and
And LinkedIn.
And LinkedIn. Morgan.
I do the LinkedIn. That's why you can tell the social media quality of LinkedIn versus Twitter.
I'm mad at LinkedIn.
They're not as good.
Yeah.
Interesting about LinkedIn, I actually was just able to successfully boost a post about cannabis on LinkedIn, and I was shocked by this because all the other networks are like, it's impossible. I get denied almost daily.
Wow.
So I don't know exactly what happened there, but I got to follow up on that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Maybe there's hope for LinkedIn.
That is really exciting.
Yeah.
One of the things we've just been posting about is one of my colleagues from New York did a consumer insights study with a quantitative survey and then also in-home ethnographies to understand the modern cannabis consumer.
Oh wow! Okay.
And how they're seeking it's actually more about having acute awareness of what's happening in your life and open-mindedness and not kind of going after the things that potentially the stereotypes had so long solidified in our minds about it. But I think they might be doing something interesting with Gateway's radar.
Yeah.
Which, so we've been posting it about that.
New market research deal here at Gateway, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really exciting new wave for investors to really understand what these new market segments are really going to look like, and also to kind of demystify it for product companies and growers, and it really will impact the whole ecosystem. So that's one of the things we've been posting a lot about. So.
Awesome. Well, great to see you guys. Thanks for doing it again.
You.
And let's maybe not make it a year next time. Let's do maybe in a few months or so. When Fund 2 comes.
Yeah.
Let me know.
We'll give you the exclusive.
Yeah.
We'll have a party.
I can't ask for better than that.
Done.
Done, yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Every week, we bring you the best stories in the new cannabis industry, the founders, the investors. We help you start a company. We help you invest in companies. If you want to learn more every week, you can subscribe, like right here. We also check out these 2 other great videos, here and here. You're going to learn a lot, guys. My name's Brandon David. Thanks for watching.